Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi is expected in Islamabad later today, a Pakistani official source said, without specifying whom he is scheduled to meet. And Lebanon has called on the United Nations to take urgent action to halt Israel's targeting of journalists, raising concerns over the repeated attacks on journalists operating in the country. Those were the headlines, and now the news in detail from Radio Algeria International. First in our news, the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, has congratulated the Algerian women's national team for winning the African Gymnastics Championship, as well as champion Kayla Nemour for her individual African women's title. President Abdelmajid Tebboune wrote on his official social media account, quote, "1,000 congratulations to the Algerian women for winning the African Gymnastics Championship, and 1,000 congratulations to champion Kayla Nemour for her individual African women's title. You have honored Algeria, which is always proud of you. More success, God willing." End of quote. The second package of contracts for the Baladna Algeria agricultural and industrial project to produce powdered milk was signed on Thursday in Algiers, mainly for implementation in Adrar province in the south of the country, with Algerian and international partners in services, construction, and cattle supply, for a total value exceeding $635 million. The details in this report by our colleague Marim Barshi.
The signing ceremony held at the Abdelatif Rahel International Conference Center was overseen by Agriculture Minister Yassin Mehdi Walid in the presence of Baladna representatives, Qatar's ambassador to Algeria, Abdelaziz Ali Nahama, and representatives of Algerian and foreign companies. This second package will enable the launch of herd formation, civil works, construction of concrete plant, accommodation facilities, and a program to import dairy cows. The minister stressed that the project, one of the largest milk production ventures in Africa, will open major prospects, boost investment in southern regions, and serve as a unique model for transforming desert land into productive farms. For his part, the Qatari ambassador said the project will be delivered within agreed timelines through well-planned steps reflecting the shared vision of both countries' leaders. Chairman Ali El-Ali noted tangible progress thanks to the first contracts signed in July 2025. The head of the Algerian Investment Promotion Agency, Omar Rakesh, said the new contracts mark a real shift from planning to execution and confirm partners' commitment, adding that subcontracting opportunities will be made available to businesses and startups. Meanwhile, National Investment Fund Director Saleh Al-Habni highlighted strong local participation with contracts signed with 7 Algerian firms, including GCB Sonatrach, which will prepare key dairy farm infrastructure designed to host 33,250 cows. He added that these contracts will help save foreign currency and support domestic production, a key pillar of economic development.
Algerian Finance Minister Abdelkrim Bouzid has advocated from New York for a new approach to development finance that would allow international financial institutions to fully assume their responsibilities. Addressing the United Nations Forum on Financing for Development, the Algerian minister stressed the need for any reform to guarantee greater contribution of developing countries in decision-making in order to equitably reflect international balances. Let's listen to Mr. Abdelkrim Bouzid.
إن الوضع الحالي الذي تتحمل فيه الدول الجزء الأكبر من مخاطر التمويل.
The current situation where countries bear the bulk of financing risks, even in the event of poor results, is unjust and inequitable. This is why Algeria calls for a new approach in which international financial institutions fully assume their responsibilities, thereby strengthening the impact of financing on development. Furthermore, any reform must guarantee greater contribution from developing countries in decision-making in order to fairly reflect international balances.
In this context, Finance Minister Abdelkrim Bouzid reviewed Algeria's sustained efforts in support of international solidarity. Let's listen to him again.
في هذا السياق تؤمن الجزائر بأن التضامن الدولي يجب أن يكون فعليا.
In this context, Algeria believes the international solidarity must translate into concrete actions. This is why it first cancelled more than $1.5 billion in debt to alleviate the financial burden on certain countries. Algeria also made direct financial contributions in the form of grants to the most vulnerable countries through international financial institutions. Finally, it established a national agency for international cooperation for solidarity and development with a budget of over $1 billion to support development projects, particularly in Africa.
تنمية خاصة في إفريقيا.
And during his participation in the United Nations Forum on Financing for Development in New York, Finance Minister Abdelkrim Bouzid met with the United Nations Deputy Secretary General and Chairperson of the UN Working Group on Sustainable Development, Amina Mohamed. Both bodies discussed Algeria's efforts to promote sustainable development in order to achieve the goals of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development at the national, regional and international levels. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi is expected in Islamabad later today, a Pakistani official source said, without specifying whom he is scheduled to meet. The Pakistani capital is preparing for a second round of expected talks between the United States and Iran, but it is unclear whether Abbas Araghchi and his accompanying delegation will meet American officials. The visit follows a series of high-level telephone contacts between Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi and Pakistan's Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar, as well as Chief of Army Staff and Chief of Defense Forces Field Marshal Asim Munir. According to Iran's state news agency, Araghchi and Pakistani officials discussed recent regional developments and the ongoing ceasefire between Iran and the United States. Pakistan's Foreign Office said Dar stressed the importance of dialogue and continued communication with Tehran to address outstanding issues. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump said on Thursday that he has all the time in the world to negotiate peace with Iran. Lebanon has called on the United Nations to take urgent measures and actions to hold Israel's targeting of journalists following the reported death of 28 media workers since October 2023. In a letter addressed to UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Volker Turk, Lebanon's ambassador to the UN in Geneva, Caroline Ziadi, raised concerns over what she characterized as repeated attacks on journalists operating in the country. According to a statement, Ziadi said the Lebanese Ministry of Information had documented a series of incidents involving Israeli strikes targeting media personnel since early 2023. Among those named were journalists and radio presenters Ghada Daykh of Saut Al-Farah Radio and Suzanne Khalil, who worked with Al-Noor Radio and Al-Manar TV. This came as the UN condemned Israel's targeting of a group of journalists in the southern Lebanese town of Tyre, in which reporter Amal Khalil was killed and her colleague Zainab Faraj was wounded. During his daily brief, UN Secretary General spokesperson Stéphane Dujarric condemned the killing of a Lebanese journalist Amal Khalil, extending on the occasion condolences to the victim's family and loved ones. Dujarric also conveyed the UN's hopes for a full and swift recovery for Faraj. Dujarric insisted that civilians, including journalists, must be respected and protected at all times, adding that the UN Secretary General demanded a prompt and impartial investigation into the killing, targeting civilians, and any obstruction of aid or violations of international humanitarian law. Let's listen to Mr. Dujarric.
We condemn the killing of the Lebanese journalist Amal Khalil in a reported Israeli airstrike in Tyre in southern Lebanon that took place yesterday. We extend our condolences to the family, friends, and the colleagues of Amal, and we express our hopes for full and swift recovery of the second journalist who was injured in the same incident. The Secretary General recalls that civilians, including journalists, must be respected and protected at all times. He calls for a prompt and impartial investigation to this killing, targeting civilians and obstructing aid or violations of international humanitarian law. He reiterates that journalists must be able to perform their essential duties without fears of interference, harassment, or worse.
That was the spokesperson of the UN Secretary General, Stefan Dujarric. And still in the Middle East, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights has condemned the killing of 3 Palestinians by Zionist settlers in the occupied West Bank, stressing that these crimes occur within a context of escalating and uncontrolled violence carried out by settlers under the protection of Zionist occupation forces. More details again with our colleague Mariam Barshi.
Last Tuesday, Aus Hamdi Nassan, 14, and Jihad Abu Naim, 35, were killed by Zionist settlers' gunfire in the village of Al Mughayr in the occupied West Bank, while Auda Wauda, 25, died in a separate attack perpetrated by settlers in Dir Dibwan, east of Ramallah. The UN office stated that these crimes are part of an escalation of uncontrolled violence and carried out by a settler movement protected by the forces of the Zionist occupation. In this context, the head of the UN Human Rights Office in the occupied Palestinian territory, Ajit Songwe, said that the systematic impunity enjoyed by the perpetrators lies at the heart of this persistent and relentless horror, adding that the international community must demand that all perpetrators of killings in the occupied Palestinian territory be genuinely held accountable in order to put an end to this bloodshed. Vice Party UN spokesperson Stefan Dujarric said during his daily press briefing that recent Zionist attacks in the West Bank have particularly affected schools. Referring to the killing of Palestinian teenager Aus Hamdi Nassan, he noted that settlers had destroyed a school serving around 60 students in the Jordan Valley. This came as the Israeli occupation forces arrested 3 Palestinians early today in Nablus, northern West Bank. Security sources said special forces raided the old city, searched a home, and detained Taysir Mashal. Troops also stormed other neighborhoods, ransacked houses in Krumashor, and arrested brothers Ashraf and Abdul Rahim Fakhuri. Raids, clashes, and arrests occur daily across the West Bank and occupied Jerusalem and have intensified since the Gaza war began on October 7, 2023. Meanwhile, about 17,000 worshippers performed Friday prayers at Al-Aqsa Mosque amid restrictions and tight measures imposed by occupation forces around the old city and its gates.
And finally, some 470 Congolese refugees left Burundi on Thursday in a first convoy to return to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, DRC, which they had fled in recent months due to conflict. UNHCR representative in Burundi, Brigitte Mukanga-Eno, told the press that new convoys are expected to follow on Tuesdays and Thursdays in the coming weeks, each carrying around 1,000 refugees. According to UNHCR, more than 100,000 Congolese crossed the border to seek asylum in Burundi after the capture of Uvira. Mukanga-Eno stressed that Burundi, the DRC, and the UN agency have decided together to facilitate the return of refugees who wish to go back home after noticing that some refugees were starting to return spontaneously and voluntarily to Congo after the reopening of the border between the two countries at the end of February. And with this last piece of news, we come to the end of this news bulletin. Time now for our weekly programs with my colleague Mariam Barshi and Asya Bakar. As for me, I'll meet again tomorrow for a fresh edition of our news bulletin. Thank you and goodbye for now.
Hello and welcome to our special program on how to navigate the digital world safely. Today we are discussing vital cybersecurity for everyone, from small business owners to families. Let's work together to boost awareness and build safer online habits. First, let's focus on cybersecurity for small businesses. It's important to recognize that small businesses are often targets for cyber attacks. In fact, nearly half of all cyber breaches impact businesses with fewer than 1,000 employees. Awareness of this risk is the first step to prevention. For small businesses, it's a good idea to train employees in security principles. Focus on helping them identify phishing emails, encourage the use of strong passwords, and establish clear guidelines for handling customer data. Keep all software updated, including antivirus software. Remember that small and medium-sized businesses, SMBs, allocate 5% to 20% of their total IT budget towards security. Cyber attacks don't just target big corporations. They can impact the very services that small businesses provide to our communities. The director of the United Nations Institute for Disarmament Research, Robin Geese, reported during the 2024 Cyber Stability Conference on unpacking cyber threats to international peace and security that even critical infrastructure were targeted by cyber threats.
So in 2024 alone, we have seen continued cyber attacks against critical infrastructure, targeting essential public services, targeting services that are vital for the functioning of societies, and even humanitarian activities and humanitarian deliveries. We've seen sophisticated cyber attacks against ICT supply chains, where often a strategy of target one and compromise many is pursued, and obviously that has wide-ranging ripple effects on cyberspace and cyber functionality as a whole. And then thirdly, and you'll all be very much aware of this, we're seeing increasingly costly and disruptive ransomware attacks, with over $1 billion paid in ransom by victims in 2023 alone, the highest number ever recorded according to Chainalysis. So much for threats.
Moving on to personal data security, it is worth remembering that in a large percentage of hacking cases, compromised passwords are to blame. Think about enabling multi-factor authentication whenever possible. It's also wise to be cautious about clicking on links in emails or text messages, and it's a good idea to always verify the sender's identity. Regarding security for children and families, the internet has great opportunities for learning and connection, but there are potential risks we need to address. It is vital to teach children about online safety from a young age, help them understand the dangers of sharing personal information with strangers, and emphasize the importance of reporting any online interactions that make them feel uncomfortable. Open communication is key. It is beneficial for parents to take an active role in monitoring their children's online activity. Establishing clear rules about screen time and the websites they can visit is a good start. Parental control tools can also be helpful for blocking inappropriate content and limiting online access. With respect to security on social networks, social media platforms can be a wonderful tool for connection, but we should all be aware of the potential risks. Be mindful of the information you share on social media, because it can be used to steal your identity or gain access to your accounts. Adjust your privacy settings to control who can see your post and personal information. Raise awareness of these risks with your friends and family. It is wise to be cautious of friends' requests from people you don't know and avoid clicking on suspicious links or attachments. Also, remember to report any harassment or inappropriate content to the social media platform. As for organizing awareness campaigns about the risk of artificial intelligence for our children, it is important to note that AI is transforming our world. It is vital to educate our children about its potential risks. Speaking at a UN policy brief on digital platforms, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres stressed the danger that AI can pose.
New technology is moving at warp speed, and so are the threats that come with it. Alarm bells over the latest form of artificial intelligence, generative AI, are deafening, and they are loudest from the developers who designed it. The scientists and experts have called on the world to act, declaring AI an existential threat to humanity on a par with the risk of nuclear war. We must take those warnings seriously. Our proposal Global Digital Compact, New Agenda for Peace, and Accord on the Global Governance of AI will offer multilateral solutions based on human rights. But the advent of generative AI must not distract us from the damage digital technology is already doing to our world. The proliferation of hate and lies in the digital space is causing grave global harm now.
Encouraging children to be critical thinkers and question the information they encounter online is so important. Discuss the potential for AI to be used for manipulation or misinformation. Encouraging children to be critical thinkers and question the information they encounter online is so important. Discuss the potential for AI to be used for manipulation or misinformation. Promote responsible and ethical use of AI tools. It is important to realize the growing sophistication of AI-generated content. By raising awareness about the risk of AI, we can empower our children to navigate this new technology safely and responsibly. That's all for our program on digital safety today. Remember, staying safe online is an ongoing effort. By being proactive about protecting your personal information, your business and your family, you can minimize your risk of becoming a victim of cybercrime.
Hello, dear listeners, and welcome to our cultural program. Today we'll talk about a novella written by Mouloud Faraoun, an Algerian writer that was born in 1913 in Tizi Ibil in Tizi Ouzou, Algeria. He became a schoolmaster in Algeria and was assassinated on March 15, 1962, a week before the War of Independence ended. Today's novella is The Poor Man's Son, known in French as Le Fils du Pauvre, that was written in 1954 during the Algerian Liberation War. The Poor Man's Son is largely autobiographical. The main character's name, Foroulou Manrad, is almost an anagram of Mouloud Faraoun. The book opens with a preamble. Manrad is a school teacher in a small village in Kabylia, and he wrote his personal story in a notebook. The first part of the novella is a first-person narrative, with Foroulou telling about his childhood. He recreates his small village, describes the genealogy of his family and their way of life. Like a gifted storyteller, he makes us hear and see life in this remote part of Algeria. He describes the streets and the houses, the family clan and its living together, the bickering and even jealousy between his mother and his aunt. As the only boy, he was cherished by his parents and was always put first. His sisters didn't have the same position in the family, and he had better food and better care. Something that he was aware of at a young age, as he tells the reader in this passage, quote, "Since I was the first viable boy born in my family, my grandmother peremptorily decided to call me Foroulou, from to hide. This means that nobody in the whole world could see me until I'd crossed the threshold of our house myself on my own feet." Unquote. That's how important he was to his family. Faraoun depicts a place where almost everybody was poor and always on the verge of being poorer. Any accident or illness preventing the adults to work could lead to starving. Any event affecting the crops could lead to not having enough food to put on the table. All of the adults' energy is spent on staying afloat and feed the family. If needed, men went to France to work for a while and sent fresh money back home. Firaun weaves a wonderful tribute to his aunts as he loved spending time in their house. They were artisans creating potteries and baskets with artful drawings. He remembers their craft and their affection. Unfortunately, one of them dies while giving birth, and the other loses her mind from sorrow and disappears forever, leaving young Firaun deeply touched and deprived of the unconditional love he received from them. Their love was shown not only in their care but also in the stories they related to him that surely played a major role in widening his imagination to make him become an author himself. With little touches, little anecdotes and memories, this scenery appears to us. We see the dusty streets and the unbearable summer heat. We hear children laughing and running through the village playing together. We see the family. We imagine Furulu in the fields, destined to be a shepherd. Anecdotes about fights, tricks, and illnesses let us see the local traditions. The presence of the French occupier back then is only palpable in some areas like the school system and the police, as the villagers did their best not to involve the French police in their quarrels. Things start to change for Furulu. When he goes to school, it's a sacrifice for the family. They need to buy him supplies and clothes, and while he's in school, he's not working. This was common in poor communities. School isn't seen as vital as working, and Firaun wonders. Are family men who spend their time trying to satisfy little bellies able to also take care of little brains? As you can guess from Firaun's biography, going to school will be a turning point in his literary doppelganger's life. Furulu's school teacher in the village made him participate in a competition to win a scholarship to go to the college or junior high. This was common practice in the French school system of the beginning of the 20th century during the French colonization to Algeria. School teachers were on a mission to detect only lucky, bright pupils to help them go further. It was also a way to have candidates to enter the École Normale, the state network of schools that trained future school teachers. That's what Manrad and Firaun did. For the second part of the book, we switch from Furulu's voice to that of an omniscient narrator. This part relates Furulu's years in college and his years after graduation. There is no real plot in The Poor Man's Son. It's mostly a tribute from a grown man to his origins. He recalls his childhood with tenderness and emotion, but doesn't sugarcoat poverty. The Poor Man's Son is a novella that brings history and art together and immerses the reader in the world of a young boy whose destiny was different from that of his surroundings. And despite the sorrow and suffering revealed in the book and the tears that may be shed by the reader, The Poor Man's Son remains worth of the reader's time for the information and the artistic style of the life story of a writer as popular as Mouloud Firaun.
Sintonizan Radio Argelia Internacional. El diario hablado.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Cooperación Agrícola Argelino-Qatarí, la empresa Beledna, firma un segundo lote de contratos para su megaproyecto agroindustrial del complejo lácteo en Argelia por un valor total de más de 635 millones de dólares. Donald Trump anuncia una prórroga de 3 semanas del alto el fuego en el Líbano en el momento en que los esfuerzos por alcanzar un acuerdo con Irán se han estancado. Y el presidente del gobierno español, Pedro Sánchez, muestra absoluta tranquilidad tras el correo del Pentágono que plantea la posibilidad de suspender a España de la OTAN. Señoras y señores, cordiales saludos a todos. Antes de detallar todos estos titulares e informaciones, les informamos que el presidente de la República, Abdelmejid Tebboune, felicitó ayer al equipo femenino argelino de gimnasia por ganar el campeonato africano y también felicitó a la campeona Keyla Nemour por su título individual africano. 1000 felicitaciones a las mujeres argelinas por ganar el campeonato africano de gimnasia y 1000 felicitaciones a la campeona Keyla Nemour por su título individual africano. Han llenado de orgullo a Argelia, que siempre se siente orgullosa de ustedes. Que sigan cosechando éxitos, escribió el presidente Abdelmejid Tebboune en su cuenta oficial de redes sociales. Cooperación Argelino-Qatarí se firmó ayer en Argel el segundo lote de contratos para el proyecto agroindustrial de la empresa Beledna Argelia para la producción de leche en polvo, principalmente en la sureña provincia de Adrar, con socios argelinos y extranjeros en las áreas de servicios y suministro de ganado vacuno por un monto total superior a los 635 millones de dólares. La ceremonia de firma, que tuvo lugar en el Centro Internacional de Conferencias Abdelteif Rahal, fue presidida por el ministro de Agricultura, Desarrollo Rural y Pesca, Yassin Mehdi Walid, en presencia de representantes de la empresa Beledna, el embajador de Qatar en Argelia, Abdelaziz Ali Nahma, así como representantes de empresas argelinas y extranjeras. Yassin Mehoubi nos dice más sobre este segundo lote de contratos.
Este segundo conjunto de contratos permitirá el establecimiento de la ganadería, abarcará las obras de ingeniería civil, la construcción de una planta de hormigón e infraestructura de alojamiento y pondrá también en marcha el programa de importación de vacas lecheras. En un discurso pronunciado en esta ocasión, el ministro de Agricultura, Desarrollo Rural y Pesca, Yassin Mehdi Walid, destacó la importancia de este ambicioso proyecto, uno de los mayores proyectos de producción de leche en polvo del continente africano, e indicó también que abrirá amplias perspectivas y impulsará la inversión en las provincias del sur, especialmente porque constituye un modelo único en el mundo para transformar tierras desérticas en granjas y unidades de producción agrícola. Por su parte, el embajador del Estado de Qatar en Argelia, Abdelaziz Ali Nahma, especificó que la ejecución del proyecto se completará dentro del plazo acordado y según fases cuidadosamente planificadas, subrayando al respecto que el proyecto refleja la visión de futuro de los líderes de ambos países. Abundando en el mismo contexto, el director general de la Agencia Argelina de Promoción de Inversiones, la API, Omar Rakash, consideró que la firma de este segundo lote de contratos refleja una transición efectiva de la fase de planificación a la de ejecución y confirma, por otra parte, la seriedad de los diversos socios, así como su compromiso con el éxito del proyecto de acuerdo con los objetivos establecidos. El mismo responsable argelino añadió que la agencia está dispuesta a ofrecer a los operadores económicos y a las empresas emergentes las oportunidades de subcontratación que se brindan en el marco de este proyecto.
El ministro argelino de Finanzas, Abdelkrim Bouzred, abogó desde Nueva York por un nuevo enfoque para la financiación del desarrollo que permita a las instituciones financieras internacionales asumir plenamente sus responsabilidades. El ministro argelino, quien se expresaba en el Foro de las Naciones Unidas sobre financiación para el desarrollo, destacó la necesidad de que cualquier reforma garantice una mayor participación de los países en desarrollo en la toma de decisiones a fin de reflejar de forma equitativa los equilibrios internacionales. Escuchemos su intervención.
إن الوضع الحالي الذي تتحمل فيه الدول الجزء الأكبر من مخاطر التمويل.
La situación actual en la que los países soportan la mayor parte de los riesgos financieros, incluso ante resultados deficientes, es injusta y desigual. Por ello, Argelia aboga por un nuevo enfoque en el que las instituciones financieras internacionales asuman plenamente sus responsabilidades, fortaleciendo así el impacto de la financiación en el desarrollo. Además, cualquier reforma debe garantizar una mayor participación por parte de los países en desarrollo en la toma de decisiones a fin de reflejar de manera justa los equilibrios internacionales.
En este contexto, el ministro de Finanzas dio repaso a los esfuerzos sostenidos de Argelia en apoyo a la solidaridad internacional. Escuchemos otra vez a Abdelkrim Bouzred.
بهذا السياق تؤمن الجزائر بأن التضامن الدولي يجب أن يكون فعليا.
En este contexto, Argelia considera que la solidaridad internacional debe traducirse en acciones concretas. Por ello, en primer lugar, canceló más de 1.500 millones de dólares de deuda para aliviar la carga financiera de ciertos países. Argelia también realizó contribuciones financieras directas en forma de subvenciones a los países más vulnerables a través de instituciones financieras internacionales. Finalmente, creó una Agencia Nacional de Cooperación Internacional para la Solidaridad y el Desarrollo con un presupuesto de más de 1.000 millones de dólares para apoyar proyectos de desarrollo, especialmente en África.
Y en el marco de su participación en el Foro de las Naciones Unidas sobre Financiación para el Desarrollo, que se celebra, tal como decíamos, en Nueva York, el ministro de Finanzas, Abdelkrim Bouzred, se reunió con la vicesecretaria general de las Naciones Unidas y presidenta del Grupo de las Naciones Unidas sobre Desarrollo Sostenible, Amina Mohamed. Ambas partes abordaron los esfuerzos de Argelia para promover el desarrollo sostenible con el fin de alcanzar los objetivos de la Agenda 2030 para el desarrollo sostenible a nivel nacional, regional e internacional. El presidente estadounidense Donald Trump anunció una extensión de 3 semanas del alto el fuego en el Líbano, en un momento en que los esfuerzos por alcanzar un acuerdo con Irán se han estancado. El alto el fuego entre Israel y Líbano se extenderá por 3 semanas, escribió el presidente estadounidense en su plataforma Truth Social, tras otra reunión entre representantes de ambos países en Washington. Vigente desde el 17 de abril, la tregua, que inicialmente debía finalizar el domingo, ha brindado cierto alivio a la población libanesa en un conflicto que ya ha cobrado más de 2.450 vidas y ha desplazado a más de 1 millón de personas en el país desde principios de marzo. En el terreno, las violaciones de las fuerzas de ocupación continúan dejando víctimas en medio de una escalada que mantiene la tensión en la frontera y agrava el balance humano de la ofensiva. En una nueva violación de la tregua vigente, 3 civiles libaneses perdieron la vida ayer en un nuevo ataque de la aviación sionista contra la localidad de Nabatie, al sur del Líbano. Y siempre en lo que al Líbano se refiere, las Naciones Unidas informó que trabaja en opciones para mantener una presencia en el Líbano una vez concluya a finales de este año el mandato de la Fuerza Provisional de la ONU, la FINUL. Yassin Miroubi.
Sí, Kahina, en una rueda de prensa celebrada en Ginebra, el secretario general adjunto de la ONU para Operaciones de Paz, Jean-Pierre Lacroix, explicó que el Consejo de Seguridad solicitó ayer recomendaciones sobre una eventual misión posterior a la FINUL, las cuales deberán presentarse antes del 1 de junio. Según Jean-Pierre Lacroix, las autoridades libanesas desean conservar una presencia de Naciones Unidas, aunque no necesariamente con el mismo formato actual, sino con funciones centradas en la observación, la elaboración de informes, así como la coordinación y la desactivación de tensiones y el desminado. Recordemos por último que la FINUL, desplegada en el Líbano desde 1978, ha perdido 5 efectivos en los últimos días a raíz de la continua agresión sionista contra el país medio oriental.
En medio de las crecientes tensiones en Oriente Medio y de las especulaciones sobre el posicionamiento de España ante el conflicto con Irán, el presidente del gobierno español, Pedro Sánchez, ha mostrado absoluta tranquilidad ante las informaciones aparecidas en la prensa que apuntaban a una posible exclusión de España de la Alianza Atlántica. Desde la cumbre informal de los líderes europeos en la capital de Chipre, Nicosia, el presidente del gobierno español, Pedro Sánchez, aseguró aseguró que no existe ningún debate sobre una eventual suspensión de España de la OTAN y reafirmó el compromiso de su país, un socio leal, tal como lo dijo, con la Alianza Atlántica. Escuchen.
Nosotros no trabajamos sobre emails, trabajamos sobre documentos oficiales y posicionamientos que haga, en este caso, el gobierno de Estados Unidos. La posición del gobierno de España es clara: absoluta colaboración con los aliados, pero siempre dentro del marco de la legalidad internacional. Desde nuestro punto de vista no hay debate, cumplimos con las obligaciones, somos un socio leal, estamos comprometidos, desplegados en muchísimas de estas áreas que han sido solicitadas por los propios países y, por tanto, absoluta tranquilidad.
Pedro Sánchez declaró por otra parte que la situación que hoy atraviesa Oriente Medio demuestra que la ley del más fuerte no trae paz, resaltando que su país seguirá defendiendo el derecho internacional.
La situación en Oriente Medio, la crisis provocada en Oriente Medio por esta guerra ilegal, lo que hace es demostrar el fracaso de la fuerza bruta y la exigencia de respetar el derecho internacional, el orden multilateral, salvaguardarlo y reforzarlo. ¿Por qué? Porque la ley del más fuerte al final hace que el mundo sea mucho más débil. Y es lo que estamos viendo, por desgracia, en Oriente Medio. Una situación donde no se sabe exactamente cuál es el objetivo de la guerra. En segundo lugar, tampoco parece que haya una confianza entre las partes para poder lograr un acuerdo en el corto plazo. Y eso al final a qué lleva? Uno, a sufrimiento, a pérdida de miles de vidas como consecuencia de las guerras, cientos de miles de personas desplazadas, por ejemplo en el Líbano, y tres, un socavamiento del orden internacional y finalmente unas consecuencias económicas que están pagando ya en los hogares, las empresas, las industrias, en definitiva, las economías europeas.
Quedemos en la región medio oriental. La Oficina del Alto Comisionado de las Naciones Unidas para los Derechos Humanos condenó el asesinato de 3 palestinos a manos de colonos israelíes en Cisjordania ocupada y advirtió que estos crímenes se producen en un contexto de creciente violencia descontrolada respaldada por las fuerzas de ocupación. Desde la ONU, el director de la Oficina de Derechos Humanos en el territorio palestino ocupado denunció que la impunidad sistemática de los responsables está en el centro de esta violencia persistente y reclamó que la comunidad internacional exija una verdadera rendición de cuentas para detener el derramamiento de sangre. Por su parte, el portavoz de las Naciones Unidas, Stefan Dujarric, alertó que los recientes ataques también han afectado a centros educativos tras la destrucción por colonos de una escuela que atendía a unos 60 alumnos en el Valle del Jordán. Según un informe de la ONU publicado en marzo pasado, entre noviembre de 2024 y octubre de 2025 se documentaron 1.732 incidentes de violencia de colonos con víctimas o daños materiales frente a 1.400 en el periodo anterior. Y para terminar, la sequía que azota Somalia y ha desplazado a 62.000 personas en tan solo 5 distritos del país, es lo que anunció la Organización Internacional para las Migraciones, añadiendo que esta cifra podría alcanzar las 300.000 en todo el territorio nacional. La sequía es ahora responsable de 3/4 partes de los nuevos desplazamientos de población en los 5 distritos más afectados de Somalia, declaró Brian Kelly, coordinador senior de programas de esta organización onusiana en Somalia, a los periodistas en Ginebra, ello desde Kenia. La situación corre riesgo de empeorar, advierte la OIM, cuyas proyecciones indican que aproximadamente 125.000 personas más podrían verse desplazadas por la sequía desde abril hasta finales de junio, a pesar de los pronósticos de lluvia. Y es con esta noticia que llegamos al fin de nuestro diario hablado de esta tarde, de este viernes. Gracias por habernos prestado atención. Pasamos enseguida a la segunda parte de nuestra edición. Pues el Instituto Cervantes de Argel celebra este mes de abril la literatura y el legado de Miguel de Cervantes a través de lecturas de Don Quijote. Estos eventos tienen lugar, tenemos que precisarlo, con motivo del mes del libro. Pues Doraya Bujema ha abordado el tema en la siguiente entrevista.
La entrevista de la semana.
La entrevista de la semana.
La entrevista de la semana.
Un programa de Radio Argelia Internacional, elaborado y presentado por Thoraya Bujama.